Welcome to the Gigs Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Sanz, founder and CEO of Gigs, the professional career platform for the live event industry. On this podcast, we are interviewing the very best in the touring and live event industry to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, and the unreal moments of life gigging and lessons learned on the road. This episode is sponsored by Palm Tree Health. As a freelancer, having the right health insurance is crucial, especially coverage that protects you on the job and wherever your gigs take you. Meet Will, a health insurance advisor who specializes in health coverage for freelancers like you. Here's the problem. Many plans like those from the ACA Marketplace or your spouse's group plan might not cover work-related injuries. They assume you have workers' comp, which most freelancers don't. But Will Palmer with Palm Tree Health offers customized plans that cover you in case of on-the-job accidents and provide nationwide protection. Whether you're on tour or working in another state, you're covered. Plus, he offers free consultations to help you find the right plan for your needs and budget. Don't wait. Secure your health and future today. Visit Palm Tree Health on Facebook or at palmtree.health on Instagram to learn more and contact to book your free consultation. The links will be in the show notes. Today, we're thrilled to dive into the explosive world of special effects with Cole Bibler, the president and founder of Showlive SFX. Before starting his own company, he worked with some of the biggest names in music, including Metallica, Kanye West, Paul McCartney, Beyoncé, Kid Rock, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Marilyn Manson, and many more. We're going to dive into his journey, his love for blowing things up, and the unique challenges that come with working in Pyro. Cole, welcome to the Gigs Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So happy, from Arkansas.
Yes.
Very happy to have you in the studio today. So you started working in Pyro with Marilyn Manson at 16.
Yes.
Let's go back to that. I want to hear this whole story.
So, everybody always asks how you got in, right? And that's a story. My dad was a driver for upstaging at the time, and he'd been in the business for a while, and I'd go out with him during summer, during high school. I think at the time I might have been in 9th grade, maybe 10th. And we'd go out, and one time I went out with him, and we went on Marilyn Manson. I was like, I'm not going on that. But I had nothing to do, so we went. And if anybody's familiar with the business, the drivers were sleeping during the day. So as Dad would be sleeping during the day, I had nothing to do, so I'd be hanging out on stage. And, after a few shows, somebody was eventually like, you're here all the time. Do you want, a job?
Ooh!
And that person was Tom Brewer, who's, I'd say he's legendary in the business for sure, and I probably owe a lot of my career to him. So he let me in, and he gave me a job, and at the time, I think they were paying me $600, $800 a week. I was riding in the back of the semi with my dad, so I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, because now it all changed. I was getting up at 7 a.m. and then doing the show till 1, 2 in the morning, then trying to sleep while he was driving. And then, no per diem or nothing. But when you're 16 and someone's paying you $600, $800 a week and you're on tour with Marilyn Manson, you were the coolest guy at the party, I promise.
Coolest. Oh, my gosh.
So it led from there, and we did that, and I went home, and I never thought they'd call again. I was like, well, that was a one-time thing.
What were some of the tasks you were doing?
So for Marilyn Manson, what we were doing was Tom brought me in, and he was doing the carpentry and the effects.
Cool.
So he brought me into that. So we were doing the confetti, the cryo, the burning.
What's cryo?
The cryo is like what you put on downstage, and it shoots like the big white plume fog, makes a lot of noise.
Just this is beginner's Pyro today, okay? I know nothing, and also we're going to just assume no one knows anything about this, so we're going to take it down to the basics.
Huge with EDM artists.
Yes.
Used to be bigger in the business than it is now. I mean, Taylor Swift has a bunch of cryo, stuff like that. There's still a place for it, for sure. But we were doing all the cryo and the confetti, and just really kind of designing stuff. Back in 2007, Marilyn Manson's show was very theatrical. So, we were building things like boxes of burning candles that looked like candles were on stage burning. I helped with the making of the burning Bible that he had with Tom Brewer.
Wow.
Which was a huge thing and a huge controversial thing. And that was big, So we were doing stuff like that. And then just kind of building risers and stuff. So since his show was so theatrical, it was mostly built around the effects. And then, your normal touring carpenter would be building stages and stuff. Well, we kind of took on that thing because it was just a couple drum risers and stuff like that. And the rest of the set was really built around the effects.
Whoa.
So that's where we learned where I got introduced to that, and
Coolest job for a 16-year-old.
super
ever.
cool. And then going home where I went to school in Oklahoma and being like, yeah, I went out this summer with Marilyn Manson and we were burning the Bible. Yeah, it was accepted somewhere, maybe. It might have fallen short, And when all my friends had on Marilyn Manson t-shirts, it might have fallen a little short with coolness, I thought. But
gosh. Okay, so what's next for you? You're still in what, like 11th grade?
Yeah. So I'm in 10th or 11th grade, go home, and I think, well, that was awesome. They'll never call me again. But how do I get into the business? What do I do? And then if anybody's been there, it's like, it's all you can think about, right? You sleep it, you eat it. Like, you get mad when you go to concerts because you're not the one on stage. You're like, how are these people doing this? Like, these guys are just as smart as me, or this guy is nobody. How are they into the business, And when you have a connection like your dad as a truck driver in the business, people think, oh, well, he walked you right in the doors. Well, it doesn't work that way. Some people it works that way. Maybe if your dad's a production manager or tour manager or something like that. But truck drivers are the heart and soul of the business, but at the same time, they're probably not given the full respect that they should be. So that kind of falls short. So after I realized that was not going to go much, I was like, well, what do I do next? Well, my phone rings, and it's probably August or September. No, it's probably June or July, I guess. And they say, hey, we're going back out. You want to go on Marilyn Manson? I'm like, oh, absolutely. I mean, I just said yes, like nothing. And I don't even think anyone asked my age. I know I hid it forever. Surely you could see it. So I'm like, yeah. So I called my principal, and I was like, hey, I'm going on tour. Like, I just want to let you know.
Whoa.
And he was super cool, and my vice principal was cool. And they said, you know what? You probably have more of an opportunity out there than we can give you, which I thought was huge from an educational person,
Wow.
And they said, you do it. You'll be back in, September, whatever, a couple months after school. We'll take care of your absences, and, we'll send you a thing of homework to do and blah, blah.
Oh, my gosh.
So I was like, wow, okay. Well, I'm going on tour. So we go out, and they sent the homework. I never got it. It went to my house. And my mom
wasn't there.
My mom has pictures of my friends doing like all this algebra homework, sitting as a group, and they're all doing my homework to like just get me through.
That's so nice.
But wow. I owe that to my principal and them for seeing the opportunity for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you had the support of your family and friends. And people seeing that this is a crazy opportunity, don't waste it sitting in a...
And then I went back out on that tour, and I stuck with him for 2 tours. And Tom Brewer, who was kind of like my mentor at the time, was gone. So now I'm just like the only effects guy. So now I'm like, okay, well, that's not bad. I think it was me and like the lighting guy at the time and the stage manager. And it was the same setup, really. So it was easy. But not having Tom there and like going in was like, oh, okay, now it gets real. And there was a little bit more of a target on my back because I was young. And people are like, well, I've worked the whole of my life. How'd you get in here? Which they didn't realize, even though I was young, I'd been working. I felt just as hard to try to get in, So that was fun. I mean, Marilyn Manson's an experience, I'll tell you what.
So then how long? You said 2 more tours after that.
Yeah, I think I did 3 tours with him till 2009. I think we did the Mayhem Festival.
Got it.
My ego in... I don't know, maybe young arrogance got the best of me. The 3rd tour around, it was new people. Marilyn Manson is kind of a revolving camp, as you can imagine. He's not the easiest to work for. So come the 3rd time around, there was new people out there. I probably had a new boss. I was still doing the same thing. We got in an argument about something, and I remember just calling my dad, and I was like, I'm going to quit. And my dad's like, you can't quit. You can't quit. And I'm like, no, I'm quitting. I remember marching into production. I was like, I'm quitting. I'm done with this. I'm not going to be treated this way. And he's like, nobody's quitting. To the best of the production manager, he's like, nobody's quitting. You're not going home. Just shut up. And I was like, no, I'm going home. And my mind was set, and I left.
Oof. How old were you at this point?
Probably 17.
Oh, jeez.
Now,
man.
17, maybe 18. Okay. If I wouldn't have left, I didn't know how much of a door I was closing, But at the time, I was just like, it's a lot of stress. Anybody who says the road is not stressful and it's like, oh, it's so easy, you go, they're wrong. And when, you're 16, 17, 18, and you're new and you're away from home and you have people yelling at you, talking to you like you're 20, 30, It's a lot.
And you don't know how to handle emotions.
Exactly. So, that probably wasn't one of my better moves. But it got me through. And, Guy Sykes was actually one of my first production managers.
Okay.
And he was great. He wasn't there the whole Manson run. He left as well. But he was one of my first, and he kind of walked me through a lot of that stuff. And I remember one time I was with my mom, and we're like, well, we're going on tour. It was the second time. Mm-hmm. And we had to go to Canada. Mm-hmm. And Mom's like, I don't know how you're going to get in. You're like 17. You're with this rock band. We went to a lawyer and had a lawyer sign over my parental rights to Guy Sykes, the production manager at the time, or whoever it was. And I carried a lawyered, stamped and sealed envelope with me in my bag.
Oh, my goodness.
Ready to hand to him at any minute.
Okay.
Because I was like, I'm not being sent home because I'm underage.
Okay.
It was like not happening. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even sure if we ever told him. But I remember we went and paid like this lawyer $1,000 to type up this document. My parents signed it. And they're like, have Guy sign this if he needs it. Or whoever the PM was at the time. I think it was Guy Sykes. And we get into Canada. And I'm like, oh, shit, I'm going to have to give it to him. I know it. And they're like, my passport, I don't know how I overlooked it. My passport was taken when I was like 10. Mm-hmm. And at the time, they were good for like ever when you were underage.
Right.
The guy looks at me and he goes, are you kidnapped? And I'm like, no. He goes, are you being trafficked? And I'm like, no. And he goes, do you know these people? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, okay. And he just stamped it and let me through. So luckily, I never had to hand over my parental rights. But I was planned. I had a plan B. I'm telling you, I was ready.
Glad the Canadian border is asking about kidnappings. Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think so,
Are you a child? What are you doing? Why are you with these old men?
Why is your passport taken when you were like 10?
Yeah.
So,
okay. So you said something that's really interesting. You didn't know what a big door you were closing by quitting, because again, all the emotions, you want to get out of it. You don't think you're being treated right. What did happen to your career at that point then?
I quit. I flew to a venue to what was the Nokia Theater in Dallas. Yeah. And I met my dad, who was on tour with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I was able to pick up a little bit there, but it was over, So I get home and I just like have all this emotion and guilt, and the door was closed for me. I mean, I went to graduated high school, all that, didn't know what to do, couldn't get in. Tried the stagehand thing, wasn't a huge fan of it, and I think it was probably ego. I was like, there's definitely a different mentality between like if you're a stagehand, and there's some of the best stagehands in the world, or a roadie. And I think when you come out as a roadie and you do that, maybe you feel a little bit higher up. So that didn't work out for me. I was like, this just isn't how it works. You guys are talking about your flashlights and Leathermans, and nobody cares. I want to know how many trucks are coming into the dock, stuff like that. So it was closed, so I didn't know what to do. I graduated high school. I ended up going and getting a degree in music business. I thought, well, that has to be the way in.
Right.
It's got to be.
It's a way to debt, right?
Yeah. So, I got a degree in music business, and lo and behold, the door was still closed, But that's okay. Education is power. I wouldn't pursue it again necessarily, So we came out, and who gave me my neck? Malcolm Weldon, who's getting a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Parnellis this year, which is great. Yep. My dad was out with him on Van Halen, I think, and I was at a show, and I seen him, and Dad's like, he had a great relationship with Malcolm, so I thought this might be it. Well, Malcolm was like, yeah, I can probably get you in, I can do it, Then he quits.
Okay.
And I'm like, so there that goes. So he quits. I go home, another year or so go by, and you're just at night just thinking, man, how do I get into the business? I want this so much. It's like all you can think about. It becomes an addiction, and you love it. And you're like, but you don't want anything to do with it unless you're part of it. It's so weird.
Right. Going to a show is painful.
People are like, you want to go to a show? I'm like, no, I hate that. It's like the strangest thing.
Yeah.
Malcolm was a man of his word. He called me out of nowhere. And I remember it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. He said, hey, I don't have any effects. I need a carp. Meet me in Oklahoma City on July 4th or whatever. And I said, okay. I didn't even ask. I packed my bags. I went up there. I signed all the NDAs. I sat in production. I did all that. And he goes, so I know I called you out as a carp. I need you to do the dressing rooms.
Shut up.
And I was like, Malcolm, come on. I was like, what does that entail, So I was the ambiance coordinator, or what they call a backstage coordinator probably now.
Ambiance? I've never heard that.
Yeah. So We had an entire semi truck, and it was me and this lady, Wendy Smith, who ended up leaving as well, like Tom Brewer did me, and I was on my own.
Whoa.
But we had a full semi of white leather furniture, white drapes.
Oh, gosh.
She had 7 dressing rooms.
Who's this for?
Beyonce.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Beyonce. She had 7 dressing rooms.
And you had to travel with white leather?
Around the world.
What?
And it became one of the probably hardest jobs I've had in touring.
You were totally a carp in this. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you're doing way more than a typical dressing room job.
And of course you had to wrap it. So like at the end of loadout, instead of throwing on truck, you got to wrap it in cellophane because they don't want to rip it. They don't want to, they don't want to buy it again. They don't want to smudge it. But it taught me a lot. It taught me how to work with the artist, I think, one-on-one. It taught me how to be in stressful positions when you're in the corner and you might be with Beyonce's mom or Beyonce. It kind of taught you how to handle yourself. But I mean, we'd go into the United Center and turn the Bulls dressing room into a Beyonce dressing room. Mm-hmm. White drape, white table, white everything. Wow. Blue Ivy at the time was like maybe 4 months.
Okay.
I remember holding Blue Ivy and like kind of tossing her up in the air and playing because she had a nursery. And I remember they had a security guard. I think he was an ex-New York detective. He's like, how would you feel if you dropped the world's most expensive baby? I was like, yeah, probably not,
I would be so scared to even be around it.
Yeah.
Her.
But it was crazy. I mean, they had a dressing room, a makeup room, a hair room, a massage room, a nursery, a family lounge.
Did they ever have like a VIP room where guests would come?
Yeah, then they'd have a VIP, so you're doing like 7 dressing rooms. And then on top of that, you're taking care of all the dancers who have 2 or 3 dressing rooms.
It's just
band.
you.
Yeah, and it was me and Wendy Smith, and then it became just me for a while.
Dang.
And they try to give you help, but any backstage person knows that once you turn back there and you're taking care of dressing rooms, the door, you're kind of on your own.
Oh, totally.
But we carried so much stuff. I mean, there's probably not very many people out there that say they can, unless they work for Beyonce, that say they can put out her feminine products and, her hairspray and stuff like that. I used to take pictures of it because, you're so nervous. You don't want to mess it up. And you hear these stories of like, well, I have to have green M&Ms. Well, a lot of those stories are vague, but you're so nervous. You just don't want to do it.
But a lot of them are true, too.
Yeah, a lot of them are true.
Whoa. Okay, so you're managing a whole semi for dressing rooms.
Yeah.
This is why he called you. He was like, okay, I need someone who can manage this craziness.
Exactly. And I felt like I did good. And we went around the world with it. I think I was with them for like a year and a half.
Wow. How old were you at this point?
I was probably 19.
Okay, so you can move
19,
around.
20,
Well,
Yep. There's about a 3-year break there, so probably 20. And we did great.
Yeah.
And Malcolm ended up leaving. I got sick on the tour. At the time, I was going through some stuff. I was having seizures pretty bad, which was like another thing you're trying to hide on the road at the time, right? So now you're young, now you're inexperienced, now you have this huge tour and you want the next one, and now you're having seizures. And I mean, I remember going in dressing rooms and just like, I grew up with them, so it was normal to me. And then like having seizures and being sick, and that's probably something I've never talked about. I kept that secret forever up until this point.
Did anyone witness you having a seizure?
Yeah, eventually somebody did, a couple people, and Malcolm was cool. I was like, all right, he's used to it, let's get through it. But it kind of eventually became a problem, and Malcolm was leaving to go do Cher at the time. And what people don't understand is when you're touring and you're a freelance guy, if you don't work for a vendor and you work for the band, if your production manager or your tour manager leaves, they take their team with them a lot of times, or they follow them, and you have to hope that the new PM wants you or the artist wants you. That's the benefit of working for a vendor sometimes. Totally. You may not get paid as much, you may not get to choose your job, but you're protected.
That's it.
So when Malcolm left, he was like, Cole, I can't take you with me. There's just not a spot. And I don't trust myself to leave you out here without me, which was huge of him. I mean, he knew my dad, he knew my mom. So he was like, we got to call this quits, which was fine. I learned a lot from that. You know what it did? It took me home, and I fought these seizures and taken medication since I was like 14. It took me home, and it made me change my life.
Wow.
I changed my lifestyle. And I started taking medication and stuff like that. And, I haven't had a seizure since like 2016, 2017. Wow. And they just kind of went away. But you wanted it that bad. People talk about like an addiction and addicts and what makes them change. And my addiction was the business for sure. And I wanted it that bad that I went home and I changed. Everything that my parents have been fighting me on for years.
Why do you think that I'm curious if you still think it's out there, like, where you do need to hide if you're sick or if you're not doing well, you need to hide that. Why do you feel that?
You know, a lot of these new TMs and PMs say it's not out there and they're open and it's 2024. But in the reality of things, if you're sick and you can't take care of yourself or it becomes an issue, the show is moving night by night and you're going hundreds of miles. And it's not that they don't want the best for you or they can't protect you. It's that the show must move on. And there's so many players, you know, from Live Nation to AEG to the artist to the management, that no matter who you are, you're small scale. So, you know, if you're sick and people feel like they have to hide it, I don't want to say they have to, but sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Because if it becomes an issue and there's a speed bump, this business is all about moving and moving as fast as it can. And yeah, it might seem mean, but they look at you and they're like, you're a speed bump and it's one less speed bump. I got to get rid of you. Yeah. And it's not that they're being mean. It's just the business. They're looking out for them. They have bosses, right?
Yeah.
They don't need to call the Live Nation rep and be like, oh, we're not making it because our friend who has super bad high cholesterol is having a heart attack on the side of the bus and we know about it. You know, they don't want to make that call, you know?
Dang. So you're hiding it and then you're basically really life is forcing you to change.
Exactly.
And then how long were you home making those changes?
Probably about a year, you know, and then I did a festival. I did a lot of festival stuff, EDC, you know, got back into Pyro.
Okay.
Went back into Pyro, got that going, and then it just kind of rolled from there, you know. Mm-hmm. And I hear a lot of people talk about, like, well, the production needs to take care of me. And I was at a convention, then I met you at LPS, and people were like, I need to get my medication, and production needs to help me with that. And it's like, they don't. That's great if you can. When I was on McCartney, and Diana, I think, is the production assistant, she's great. Mm-hmm. You need cough medicine, anything, she'll get it for you. But they're not like that. If you're on Kid Rock, you know, Shakes and them are like running their own crew. If you're sick, figure it out. Mm. And you kind of have to take that upon yourself and be like, how bad do I want it? Do I need to set up my Walgreens prescription 6 cities ahead? Do I need it, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's tough.
Well, I mean, especially with all of the responsibilities on tour managers right now, how can they even think about all of that too?
Exactly. And people expect them to, and it's like they have a lot going on. They have bosses.
I mean, maybe in the future there is a new role that comes out of like a chief people officer, someone who is there to take care of the crew while the tour manager tour manages.
Some tours have it, you know, but
True.
The majority of the budget's not there.
No, that's the problem. So, okay, you go do McCartney, you do Metallica.
Yeah.
That known for massive, explosive shows. In all of these next progressions, were you staying in the Pyro world?
Yeah. So everything else, I went out with a stint on Blues Traveler as a drum tech.
Nice.
Best band I've worked for, 100%. Probably because they're like big in the 90s. They're over it. We all rode the bus together. They just didn't care. Best band.
Well, you went from Beyonce to that, so I can imagine.
But best band still to this day.
Yeah.
Give me my Blues Traveler guys. They are just chill and relax. No stress. So I did that, did some other stuff, did some, you know, small TM stuff, and for some like corporate gigs for NCAA where we traveled around. I tour managed something there.
Cool.
That was kind of weird. Anyhow, get into Pyro. Again, get back into it. I meet a guy. And, you know, for people who want to get in, never overlook a t-shirt or a road case or a sticker. Never. You know, even if you look at it and you get online and you Google it and you put in an application or you follow them on Instagram, you just don't know where to lead. I mean, the swag is out there for a reason, right? Run into a guy on this small tour manager thing I'm doing for the NCAA, and he's got a Pyro shirt on from Pyro Company. And I'm like, oh, man, I got to find this guy. Yeah. So we're staying at a hotel. I go down to the bar. He's there.
Of course.
Of course,
Come on
there.
now.
So I start talking to him about my experience being in the same city, you know, just chat. And he goes, yeah, I can get you in. You want to come do a gig with me? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So we go and do a gig a couple months later, and the door's back open.
Wow.
And we do a gig, and then it just rolls from there. And, you know, I went from company to company, Pyrotechnico, Pyrotech, Image SFX, you know, all of them. And one time I was on the road for 11 months, I think.
Were you married at this point?
No, I wasn't married. I had a girlfriend. I lost a girlfriend because of it, I think.
Yeah, 11 months, man.
You know? The 11-month stint I had was with my wife, Corey, now.
Wow.
And It was great, and we were just getting together. And it was probably close to the end of us. But I had all that experience of having the door open so young, closed, getting sick, coming back, doing all these weird tours like drum tech for Blues Traveler, tour manager for the NCAA for a corporate thing they did. I went out as a production assistant for like Al Di Meola, who's this huge jazz star.
Yeah.
So all these weird stints. Get back in the pyro, start doing it, and then it's just gone. It just takes off like a rocket.
Wow.
Next thing I know, 3 or 4 years have gone by, and you look at it and you're like, wow, I've been gone for like ever. When am I coming home?
But were you just living?
But you were just living, right?
Yeah.
You didn't care. You're
Yeah.
living. You're loving it. You're like, and I was like, at that point, I was like, all right, I've had these opportunities. I've closed them. I've missed them. I'm not letting it go.
Yeah.
So there was nothing I said no to.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. Oh, you mean this gig ends on the 29th and I got to be there the 30th? No problem. I'll fly out. Can you wait for me for 8 hours? And it rolled like that for a couple of years. And then, you know, I look at my calendar and I'm dating my wife, who I have now, and it's 11 months. And she's like, are you ever coming home? And I mean, when you hear about like hardcore, like roadies, that's what they do. I was that guy. Like, I was not letting go.
Yeah.
And I was doing every gig, you know, for every company, hopping back and forth. And I'd always call them and say, hey, I've got a job with this company. Do you mind? You know, I'm giving you first right of refusal, which I think is important to do. And then we were gone and rolling, and yeah, it was busy. And I think I almost lost my wife for it.
Wow.
You know, she was like, and I was like, you know, when I was talking about hardcore roadies, I was like, this is what I do. If you don't like it, it's the end of it. Like, I don't know what to do. This is my life. End of story.
Shout out to the spouses.
Yeah, which was probably rude of me, you know? And I was like, so if you can't take it, then bye. Which was like, so probably not okay. But she held in there with me. And, you know, it kind of started to wind down. I kind of got to the point where you could pick and choose your jobs.
There you go.
I mean, I turned down Taylor Swift.
Dude, put that on your resume.
You know, I got offered Taylor Swift, but it was right after Metallica, and they didn't know much about the tour. And it was like the Red Tour or something. I was like, I'm not going. I was like, but so you get to that point. When you get to that point, let me tell you what, it's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You miss the nonstop, but it's the best.
Yeah. Oh, wait, to be able to say no?
To be able to say no.
Oh, my gosh.
And know that you can have a gig, right? You have some power.
Right.
Know
Yeah.
you can pick up the phone and call.
But how many years and gigs it takes to get to that point?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
10 years by far, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking my Metallica run was in 2017, which I was with them for a long time, 2017, 2019, which doesn't seem like a long time, but those who tour know that, like, it's a long time. And when you're flying to Europe and back every 2 weeks, it's a long time.
Yeah, man. Jeez. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about pyro specifics because so you mentioned a couple different. Can you kind of go into more of I wish I knew all the terms for everything.
No,
but I would love to learn and how you learned it. You know, if you go on a new tour, if you go on Metallica, were there new equipment that you had to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, before I got on Metallica, I did a bunch of pyro gigs for other companies, small ones. You get on Metallica, it's huge. Your stadium tour, you know, you're talking fire out on the delay towers, which if anybody knows what that is, it's audio out in the field, you know, out with the audience. You're talking big propane accumulators, which is something that holds a propane accumulator is like a propane tank.
Okay.
Only it holds massive amount of it, and it builds accumulation, which is like pressure. So that's how they shoot them flames 60, 80, 100 feet in the air. So, you know, you're talking a lot of that. You're talking different rules and regulations. You're going country to country.
Yeah.
Now you have all your stuff that your warehouse sent you from the States, and you open it up in Switzerland, and it's no good. None of the fittings work. You know, so you learn a lot like that for sure. It's a lot of on-job learning. I've always said I can teach anyone to do pyro. I can't teach anyone to tour. You know, I feel like that's something to live by.
Interesting. Can you elaborate on that?
Pyro is very mechanical, right? Very mechanical. If you can work on anything or you can figure something out, you know, you can probably do pyro. As scientific as it is, there's not a lot to it, especially in today's business, right? The fire and stuff is a mechanical piece of equipment, whether it be a propane accumulator or whatever that. And once you wrap your mind around how it works, it is fairly simple. The pyro that goes off, like, you know, we call like fireworks pyro, right? So there's difference in, you have your flame effects, which is your flames, your cryo, which is like what we talked about.
Yep.
And then you have your pyro. And everybody goes, oh, fireworks. Basically the same thing, only much smaller.
Okay.
A lot of that stuff nowadays is pre-made, right? So you order it. You say, hey, I want a mine to go up, which is like a small firework you would see that goes up and explodes into a bunch of stars. Say, I want a mine to go up and be green. You just order a green mine, 30-foot mine.
Okay.
And then you plug it in. It's very simple.
Yeah, but I mean, the planning of the spacing.
The planning is different, and the spacing. That's so you can teach anyone to do pyro, I think. It's the planning and the spacing and the logistics, right?
Yeah.
So you get into like, okay, well, I'm in Alabama, for example. We can't use propane in Alabama.
Why?
They had an explosion in the 80s or something that they can't get over. You know, it's like the equipment is much safer now. So you get into that. And so it's a lot of like, okay, well, what city can I use this? What do we use instead? And that's what's tough to teach. That's what's tough to teach. I still have guys call me today and they're like, hey, we can't have propane tanks less than 25 feet from each other. Like a barbecue bottle, it's an explosion thing.
What does it look like when it explodes?
A propane tank?
Yeah.
Well, it just kind of burns forever, but that's what these cities are trying to prevent.
Oh,
They're
if
trying
it explodes.
to prevent. So I have these guys call me, and I'm like, well, you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Move them 25 feet apart. Well, we don't have the hoses. We don't have that. Well, we're going to have to overnight you hoses, or you're going to have to get hoses. The hardest thing about pyro is learning the regulations. Because every city's different. Every country's different. Every state's different. The pyro, like I said, itself is fairly simple.
What cities do you dread going to because of the regulations?
Alabama. Which is like, just because they won't allow propane, so they have to make it
they want it.
Yeah, they want it. They have to make it complicated.
Come on.
Like, I just heard my TSO guys went in there and had propane for the first time. That's great. Great for them. But it's just so complicated. It's like, come on. Now you got to figure out how you're going to get butane cans, which is like a can you would tie into like a Coleman camp stove.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Still propane inside the thing.
My gosh.
So now,
catering uses
now
that.
you have to, now you have to have a unit that does that. Alabama's brutal.
Okay.
California's tough.
Yeah.
And it's tough because they're so safe. So they ask you questions that they don't really understand, but they have to. So it's like, well, like California has a CO2 thing, I think now, where you can't have too much CO2 in the air. So they make you put CO2 sensors down. So CO2 is carbon dioxide out of a tank, right? So the big tanks you see on the stage that shoot the confetti cans, that's carbon dioxide. And yeah, it will kill you if you put your mouth on it, I guess. So they're like, oh, well, you have to have these CO2 sensors on the ground to regulate the CO2. Well, what they don't take into effect is the air handlers for the venue, right? The doors opening and closing. It's like, okay, I have 70 CO2 tanks in an arena of 80,000 people, but we do have air conditioning, we do have doors opening. So it's stuff like that you kind of got to learn on the job on how to convince the fire marshal, like, listen, I know that's in your book, but does it make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, once you get more and more people into a place.
Yeah, exactly.
You get more CO2.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you have that argument. So that's the toughest about pyro, is just teaching the regulations and teaching the new guys, like, kind of how to work around it. Like,
Got it.
Hey, don't be worried because the fire marshal says you can't have CO2 because he needs a sensor. There's a way to talk them into it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll see the light of day, know? And pyro, like if you buy a piece of pyro product that you would see on like any concert that shoots up in the air, it comes, like I said, pre-made. You have 2 wires, right? A red and a black. And you just plug them into, like, you remember your old car stereo where you have red and black and you plug your speakers in? You plug it into what we call a module like that, and you plug that in. And then you hit the button, or there's a lot that goes behind that. You time code it. You can design the show on which number goes off. So you have a module like that has 20 inputs, and you plug in all this product 1 through 20, and you say, I want 20 to go off, 17, 2, in this order. So that's as simple as that. People hear, oh, we're going to do pyro. We're going to be in the back with chemical suits like Breaking Bad. Like, that's Pyro Pete. Pyro Pete did that.
Okay.
Right? That's Pyro Pete back in the day. That's Tom Brewer back in the day.
Whoa.
But technology's come so far that it's...
Oh, they were making fireworks.
Yeah, they were making fireworks back in the back. I mean, you can pull up Pyro Pete videos of him taking product and mixing it to get flash bombs and stuff like that, you know?
Okay, so yeah, regulations make some sense. With
Exactly. And that's the reason we have regulations, right? They're like, well, we don't need people making this stuff in the back.
Right.
But a lot of people hear that pyro and they think it's that way. It's not that way anymore.
It's way more technical and
Way
safe.
more. Yeah,
Do you
safe.
work with the lighting director and the show designer on all of this?
So from a company standpoint, so now that we have Showlive.
Let's talk about that.
So now that we have Showlive SFX, Hayden Hale, who you'll have to get him on here. He's like your laser guy. He knows anything about lasers.
Dude, I want to know about lasers.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
When you bring in a tour, right? Back in the day, you used to work like right with the LD or the artist. Like when I was in Marilyn Manson starting out, we worked with Manson himself.
Got it.
Now you have these large companies, these creative companies like Nimbus or there's a couple other ones out there, Trans-Siberian, stuff like that. Like you just had Sooner on,
You're right?
She works with a lot of those people. So they have this idea before they even call you. And they call you and they're like, hey, we're putting this tour on. We want to do this and do this. And all of a sudden they've kind of like taken your design job as a pyro, especially as a company owner. You're like, oh, wow. But they're working with the artist and they have the artist's ear. So a lot of times nowadays you work with people like Sooner, your main LD, or maybe she has a boss and it's Trask House or somebody like that. And they kind of tell you, this is our vision. This is what we want to see. And that's where the work comes in. It's like, okay, well, because now you have to explain pyro product to them and say, well, I know you want, this to explode underwater on this fake pool you're going to put on stage, but it's not possible. We have a thing called physics.
I was about to ask, can you tell me how that works?
So how about we do this instead? So it's a lot of collaboration of like, okay, well, I don't know what artist dreamed that up, but now, so you tell somebody like Sooner, well, we can do this instead, and she takes it back, and she kind of puts her mix on it, and you kind of try to design it from there, and then the real work begins of like, okay, so we've came to a point, we've sold them product, we've sold them effects that we can do that will kind of match their vision in reality, if not match it perfectly. So now you have to deploy it, right? You got to get it out there on the road. You got to pull the permits. You got to get the guys out there. You got to find you a crew chief who knows pyro and a crew chief who knows the city regulations, which is getting tougher and tougher. So you really work hand in hand with the LD and these creative companies and say, this is how it's working. But once you kind of meet that with them, they kind of let you go. Yeah. There's nothing they can do, right? Hey, this is what we want. You said you can do it. We came to an agreement. We're going to take 50% of your design, 50% of mine, and we're going to make it work.
Got it.
Because they don't understand pyro either. They Sooner has a good. There's a lot of people out there that do because they've done it so much.
Right.
So they've learned. Oh, that's not possible, and that's even getting better because now they can go to the artist and be like, hey, we can't shoot line rockets over the crowd like Rammstein does, for example, right?
What? Yes.
Can't do that in the U.S.
Show.
Yeah, you can't do that in the U.S., So a lot of people understand that now. But the creative companies and the designers working with those creative companies have just changed the business.
Got it.
They've made it a little bit easier, I think, on the pyro standpoint because they come up with the design and come your way,
Yeah, you get more. Then you get more jobs.
Now you lose some creative idea. It's no longer your creation. Now, like we have sticks on the road and it's just a laser show and they're super cool. Yeah. Like their LD's cool, their PM's awesome, but they're like, just do whatever. So then you get to create it again. Wow. You get to say, well, hey, I can do this. How about we make the lasers do this or the fire do this? And a lot of times I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Wow.
It's the bigger acts like Blink-182, Taylor Swift that have the creative companies. And you really have to work one-on-one with them.
Wow. I mean, that means... I wonder too if you guys just got to have a creative vision, because the capabilities of everything.
Exactly.
What you would put together.
Well, and that's what's great because Trans-Siberian Orchestra, for example, when I was on that tour for another company, that's kind of a vision of the guy who owns the company and Pyro Pete and the technicians and then Brian Hartley, who's the LD. Yeah. That's kind of like what comes together when a pyro people put it together because they understand it, right? Gotcha. And it's a great show. It's an elegant show. It's beautiful. It's great. But it doesn't happen that way all the time. Yeah. And it's hard to tell artists like, hey, we can't do that. Like, for example, on Kid Rock, he wanted a shotgun to act like he was going to shoot, I don't know, a bird out of the air. I have no idea. I don't know, a Bud Light out of the air. I don't know. So the office that I worked for at the time goes through all this drama to build this gun and all this, and they're like, it's not going to look that cool. Like, you're going to shoot it, and nothing's going to come out. It's just going to go bang, and then whatever in the truss is going to pop. So, like, we're going to pop Pyro up there and shoot the gun. But he has a vision in his head, and he's like, no, it's going to work. Well, they go through all this drama. We do it. He hates it. He throws it down, breaks at the first show. So that's a perfect example of, like, you can't let the artist run with it sometimes because they just don't understand it.
Yeah.
There's physics, there's laws, there's things that they just don't make. I mean, if the pyro industry had everything these artists dreamed up, we'd have some amazing equipment, but it's just not possible.
I mean, I'm envisioning like Lord of the Rings, the first Lord of the Rings, the whole, that insane dragon fireworks
exactly.
show. Yeah.
But there's a lot of cool stuff we can do. We'll get there,
We'll get
so
there.
it's you work hand in hand with people all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And you really kind of have to take a back seat when you're doing pyro, depending on who you're working with, and be like, okay. And you got to tell your guys, like, listen, I know they've never done pyro, but it's their money, their show, their design. Our job is to make it as best as we can.
Yeah.
So let's try to figure out what we can substitute to get that look.
Right.
I don't care if you have to stay up all night and find a piece of equipment in Switzerland and overnight it.
So
whatever
cool.
it takes to make that vision somewhat true, if not a reality.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
And that's the difference between now and 10 years ago. You dealt with the production manager, and he'd come out and say, hey, I want fire here, 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 and maybe an LD, and it was easy. The creative companies have really kind of turned.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, look at the shows you have out.
Right. I mean, look what's coming out.
I mean, look at Drake, look at Taylor Swift, look at Metallica. I mean, it's great stuff,
I'm curious of, like, when you're on the road, before you started your company, or just, let's say, a day in the life of your company, and you're out on the road.
Yeah.
What does a typical day look like for you guys? Because it's different than dressing rooms, I assume.
100%.
Can you take us through a day for what a pyro job looks like?
Special effects, pyro, lasers.
Yeah, special effects, thank you.
Is waiting game.
Okay.
You wait, right? A lot of times you can't come in. I mean, you come in, you load in 8, 7, 9 in the morning, you get your stuff ready. But you can't drop anything on the stage mostly until everyone's done.
Got it.
Right? If you have stuff in the air, then you want to go up with lighting, and you got to integrate with lighting. Hey, we only have 3 things up here. Can we use your cable run? So it's pyro is a lot of working with other departments. Can we do it all on our own? Yeah. But sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm putting 2 flame units up there. Can I just jump power off of your light or DMX control off your light? So it's a lot of working together, a lot of figuring that out. A lot of these companies come in like lighting, and they have the whole rig. So they don't necessarily need to work with other departments. They're kind of the top dogs or audio. Pyro has to work. So you spend a lot of the morning trying to figure it out, like in rehearsal, saying, hey, let's work together. We'll make it easier for load in, load out. How can we do this? I don't have that much stuff. Sometimes you have a lot of stuff and you have your own runs, but it's pretty rare. It's on big tours where Pyro has so much stuff. They're having their own distros and own, it's rare.
Okay.
I mean, the big tours have
Right.
it. So you do that, and then you wait, right? A lot of times you get that stuff in the air, or maybe there's nothing in the air. You wait. Okay, I need to put flame units on the ground. Can't do that until the set pieces are in, because you got to know where to put them so you don't burn the set,
Jeez.
Can't put that in until you know where that is. And the downside of that is you wait all day, and then you do it, and then everybody's like, why aren't you done yet? Why aren't you done yet? It's like, well, I can't do anything until you put your drum set in place, and you've taken 7 hours to do it, and then you have the fire marshal coming in, usually around 3 or 4.
Yep.
So you're trying to get set up, you get done, you got to do a small test. You try to do as much of a test as you can before they get there so you don't look like a complete idiot. And then my pet peeve with pyro and touring is you do all this. You wait all day for lighting, carps, to put your stuff, because you have to have it, right?
Right.
And then the fire marshal comes in at 3:30, and it never fails. The PM or the stage manager is like, why aren't you done yet? Why are we waiting on the fire marshal? This is so stupid. It's like, that's out of my control. We have to wait on the fire marshal. He has the permit. It's his city. And they just don't get it sometimes. They're like, well, this is so stupid. Sound check with the artist is at 4 and your demo is at 3. It's like, well, I would have loved to make it at 2, but you didn't have the stage set up till 2:30. Or, sometimes the fire marshal can't come till 3. Who am I?
Right.
Well, that's not going to work for me. And a lot of these guys think that's how it works, and it doesn't. And the fire marshals understand the business.
That's good.
And they'll work with you. But I mean, I've seen some things go south. I mean, I've seen production managers or stage managers be like rude to them, and then be like, well, you don't have a show then.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
Okay.
So that is a pet peeve.
Delicate. Your position is delicate.
It's very delicate.
With all, negotiating and collaborating with all departments.
Yeah.
And trying to appease the TM and PM.
Exactly.
To wait for you.
And then you got to wait for the fire marshal, which is out of your control, you know? Ooh. And then, so it's big tours have it figured out, and it takes a couple weeks to iron that stuff out. Yeah. And then, you have to deal with lighting one-on-one because you don't want to burn their lights. Yeah. You don't want to shine a laser in their light or the camera guy. You really have to work on everyone one-on-one. Yeah. So it's a lot of walking on eggshells, I guess you could say. Interesting.
Okay, so then show goes on. You are participating the whole show. Yeah, you have cues, you have calls.
Yeah, so time codes changed things tremendously in the last 10, 15 years. That's pre-programmed? Yeah. Okay. So a lot of times, you work it out, you do rehearsals. Okay, this is this cue, this is that cue. And you shoot it what we call like freestyle. So you have it all. You're usually stage right. I'm not a fan of shooting fire or lasers from front of house because you have to have a line of sight, right? You have to be able to see the artist. You have to be able to see the lights. And from front of house, your depth perception is just not there. Yeah. That's how people get burned. I mean, I hate to say it. There's going to be a lot of haters there because the cool thing now is to have your console at front of house. But that's how people get hurt. Dang. So, you work it out, you get the cues, and then a lot of times you got in-ears in, just like an audio guy, and you're trying to shoot the cues on point.
When they're singing, yeah.
When they're singing, which is an art that is not taught. You kind of either have it or you don't. It helps if you're musically inclined. Yeah.
Drum tech, hey. Yeah. You can keep a beat.
Tom Brewer is probably one of the best freestyle shooters I've seen. He shoots everything by ear. Wow. To the point where artists are like, well, we have time code. We could just time code this. And he's like, well, I could do it by ear. No. He's pretty good. He's fast with the fingers, because everything's different. So, but time codes changed a lot of that, which is where people have started moving towards front of house because now you can design your show in some sort of software, whatever you have, you can show it to the client. They can send you the audio files and you could say, okay, I want this cue at 1 minute, 5 seconds, 3 minute. And you can teach that console and program it in just like a light. Wow. Where it hits the fire. The plus side of time code is your show's perfect, right? There's no missing a beat. It's on. It's perfect.
Can you have less people working then on a tour? Like, can you save costs from labor?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, this is good. There's no costs and labor to be saved there, but there's, I guess, a thing of you relieve yourself a little bit. You don't have to worry so much if you're going to hit the cues. Yeah. There's still a little bit. You have to arm the system and stuff like that. But got it. And that's where people started moving towards front of house to kind of shoot fire. That's kind of the new thing. But a lot of the artists and the shows are getting so big they have no choice but to go on to time code. Because they have the lights moving. And like Sooner said the other day, they have cars flying in the air. So a lot of this stuff is triggered by a computer now, but someone has to be there to teach that computer and someone has to be there to put that in. So it's still someone's needed. Got it. And so that's definitely something that's changed.
Can you, just so you know, I haven't even looked at these cards in front of me because this is just an awesome conversation and my mind is going a million different places. No. I can't believe I didn't start with this, but can you talk about like some crazy things that have happened? Like, are there any accidents that have happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Ugh. So, accidents in pyro I think are rare. You might burn your hand or something grabbing a unit that's hot, stuff like that. But I've been involved when I was on Metallica, for instance, you get a pyro room. On every show where you have pyro, you get a pyro room, right? And the dressing room person knows that. Live Nation knows that. The other crew hates it. Well, that's why we're pyro and you do lights, because we get a room.
That's the only reason.
And it's a legal thing. You have to have a room to lock the pyro up in. So these guys are on Metallica in a sea container, because if they don't have a room for you, they might put you in a semi-truck, a sea container. Oh. They're in the sea container, loading the pyro boards because you want to load them and kind of plug them in and, shunt them, which is what we mean by making sure the product doesn't go off. So if you shunt them, you can't get any electricity to it. So it protects the product. So a lot of times that stuff's loaded before the show and then they take it on stage or take it up. Well, the loader was in there loading the pyro and something was going on, I don't know, with somebody maybe programming a show, maybe being a little obsessive and checking the show over and over. I don't really know, who knows. But the product went off And when you're in a sea container, they have all the product kind of set up on the walls facing this way because there's nowhere to put it, right?
Okay.
So they load it, stand it up, and we hear all this going off, and we're in catering. And, of course, everybody yells gunshot.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, pyro. So me and the pyro guys run to the sea container, and these two guys are just in there just getting blasted by product.
There.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And they're trying to get out, and one guy's fallen, one guy's gotten out. So we get him out. I run in the container, and I pull out the boards because the thing with pyro is once it starts going off, it goes off. So if you have something that goes 300 feet like we did on Metallica, it's going to bounce in that sea container for 300 feet.
Dude.
And whatever it catches on fire is going to go off as well, right?
That's why there's a pyro room.
That's right. So if you have one piece of product that accidentally goes off and it hits another piece, you're going off maybe. So I run in there and we try to pull the boards out and face them up so they'll shoot up. And then, instantly as far as safety, you just called the other team because you don't know what to do. They don't really teach you that, right? You don't know what to do, but you also don't want to be responsible for not doing anything.
Yeah.
So I called the other team, and they run up, and I'm like, set off a perimeter. Don't let anybody in here because now you're in Europe. They're going to come take pictures. The production manager's going to want to know. You want to treat it like a crime scene almost, without being crazy dramatic.
Yeah.
So the other guys run up, and we kind of just closed it off, wouldn't let anybody in, put out the product with extinguishers that we had on site, and then, just kind of went from there. Let the PM come up. You got to take pictures. I don't think there's a rule book that says, hey, if this goes off, this is what happens. I mean, companies have that now, but it's good that if something happens, you instantly take photos.
Got it.
You want to take photos, you want to take pictures of it because it can lead to you getting hurt, to the production manager being, okay, it's over, let's move on, to going all the way up the chain to the fire marshal, to the state. So you want to make sure that you have your stuff together because we want to do what we do.
Yeah.
And we don't want them to shut us down.
How were the guys that were in the room?
The one guy ended up okay, and the other guy, he was pretty beat, I mean, I'll give it to him. He came back the next day for the show.
Wow.
But I have pictures somewhere where he's black and blue from his hips down because he just got hit with product, one after another, and he couldn't get out.
Scary.
So
man.
Accidents happen, people like to say, oh, they don't happen, and they are rare, but they happen.
Totally.
And they don't teach you what to do. You just kind of gotta do it, Your job as a pyro guy or any effects guy is to keep everyone safe. So if you don't react when things go south, I mean, that's kind of part of it. You have to react.
You need to not have this, whatever mentality. You really have to be.
Yeah, you can't have that. And that's a lot of they bring these new guys in and, the business, that's why gigs is so great. The business comes in and people are so, the business is so hard up for people right now.
Yeah.
People come in, they're like, oh, I'll be a pyro guy. Well, the thing is, they're just like, oh, yeah, I'll load it. It's easy, which I just said myself. Totally. It's fairly easy. But then when things go south, they're like, oh, it's okay. Who cares? Or, oh, it's okay. He's 3 feet away from the flame. Nobody cares. You can't have that mentality because people get hurt,
Wow. So you're feeling right now in the industry that you're really needing, the industry needs more pyro and special effects.
Yeah, we need people.
Yeah.
Right? We absolutely need people. And I don't know if the college people is the best way to go. I mean, no offense to that. But you kind of need to know your way around the artists and stuff. If you're on a pyro team, you're being trusted with millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And equipment and people. I mean, you don't want to be the one who burns Beyoncé.
Dude.
Right? And being a touring professional means that you kind of know how to talk to those people and walk with those people, and that's not something that comes out of college and you know how to do, like I explained. Right. So you got to know how to take people aside. I've had to take many artists aside, like, hey, I love you, but can you stand here instead of here? Or like I had Logic and we were doing a laser thing and he kept just gotta shine that wristwatch in the lasers, right? Well, the lasers just explode and go into the crowd, which lasers are a dangerous thing. They're lasers, if nobody knows, are ran by the health department, the FDA, So now you're on the same page as like a doctor that does LASIK or something. They kind of hold you to those standards.
Wow.
Which it's not the same, but they don't know that. So I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Like, can you please stop? We all see your Rolex. We get it. You're blinding people. And they don't like that. But, that takes the experience in the business. People don't like to talk to the artists.
Wow.
They're
And then
nervous.
also having that discipline of, okay, there are so many cool and fun parts of the job.
Yeah.
But also knowing that the job is knowing regulations in every city, in every state.
Exactly.
And
It's
if you
tough.
know that, then you can be a crew chief. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you can really work your way up.
You can work your way up, exactly, to a crew chief and stuff like that. And the rates are good, right? Pyro gets paid well. You know, I don't know exactly what other departments get paid. And I've always kind of got a tough time for saying day rates.
Yeah.
But listen, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. When I left touring, I was getting paid like $4,000 a week, right? Now I know there's guys out there making $5,000-6,000. There's guys out there making $2,000 a week. But you know, if you come into Pyro, you can walk in making $400 a day, $350 a day off the start. You know?
Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, and I think it's important we keep our day rates. Everybody wants to keep it quiet, but it's important you keep it open because you're going to outbid yourself.
Right.
People are going to come in and be like, oh, well, I was told I could do this for $200 a day. You're going to find yourself out of a job. And that's how people start getting on tours. Not that they don't belong there, but they start being in charge of tours, and then things go south.
Yep.
Tours get missed, shows get dropped, you know, stuff like that. So I think it's important, you know, you share your day rate to a point. I don't want to say you go back and you say, well, this guy's getting paid $50 more than me. Be happy with what you get, but take that knowledge and learn it for next time.
For the next gig.
For the next gig.
To bid yourself well.
And know what you're worth. Just because your crew chief has been on the road for 15 years and has done it and he's getting paid $600 a day doesn't mean you're owed that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? But it doesn't mean you need to be out there for $200 a day either.
Yeah. I mean, you worked for nothing to start. I worked for nothing to start. And how long it takes to get to there, I think. And I love that you were vulnerable at the beginning and talking kind of how ego gets in there.
Yeah.
You do a couple tours and you're like, yeah, I'm so badass. It takes so many more gigs and experience to get even to where you really are in a leadership position.
Absolutely. And it's, ego gets in the way. I got to the point where, like, God, when I was touring, these guys would come off the dock, or when I was younger trying to get in, they'd be so mean. Hey, how do I get in? Oh, shut up. And I was like, I'll never be that guy.
Yeah.
I became that guy.
Wow.
Because it becomes old, after a while. And like you asked me earlier, like what my kids think of it. Like I got a 12-year-old and a 1-year-old, so she doesn't think much. But my 12-year-old, she's like, nah, I guess it's cool. Dad does pyro. I don't know. And like you want them to be excited. And I think her time is coming. But yet I'll run into a guy in a grocery store that sees a shirt and he'll ask me all these questions. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. And the people I want to be excited is like my kids. But it's so normal to them that dad's on the road or he has a warehouse full of things that blow up. He's like,
yeah, it'll come around. I mean, you were fascinated by your father.
Exactly.
He got you into this.
So it's definitely strange. And
so now you started Showlive SFX, Lordy.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so going from being on the road to 11 months of the year, touring all the time, to owning a business now, how has that changed your family relationship and just like your life?
I think it's gotten much better. My dad was in the business, and my mom was a wife of like a roadie, so I learned a lot there. And I guess I held a lot to her, like, well, she can take it. Why can't you take it? Which isn't the right. It takes a certain kind of spouse. I've gotten lucky, but it's changed. My last tour was set to go out on Nickelback with another company, and I broke my foot. And my daughter was being born. And I was like, you know what? I've done this long enough, going back to being able to pick your gigs. I was like, I'm not going out all summer with a cast or a boot on my foot. Not happening. I have this company that's starting. We have some tours on the way. I'm obviously not moving up in this, position I'm in, so I have to move on. And now looking back on that, it was probably one of the best decisions I made, not only for Showlive, but, my daughter was going to be born. And when we looked at it, it was like, okay, you're going to go on Nickelback. You're going to be gone for 6 months. Then you're going to come home for 2 months. Your daughter's going to be born, and then you're going to go out on TSO. Which is, so I was going to be gone like in a total like 7-8 months for my daughter. And back to the like hardcore roadie thing, when I was on the road, I was like, oh, I'll have a kid. It's not a big deal. This is what we do. We're roadies. We move on if you can't take it. But I'm grateful that I broke my foot because being there with my little girl, between those ages, I've been home with her the whole time. No. She wouldn't have known me when I came home, Wow. She would have known me for 2 months, 60 days, and then I would have been gone, forever, to her. So it's grateful to be back.
Well, and what an incredible shift that you, are taking everything you've learned on the road into your own business, taking that leap, which is a scary leap, But it seems that it's going really well for you guys.
Yeah, it's going great. And that's really what we're trying to do. You know, you get in and the business is hurting for people.
Yeah.
And you get into a position and you either move on or move up. And a lot of these companies can't move these guys on to something or move them up because they need them.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to bring in roadies with experience. You know, our slogan's like real roadies only. Not saying I won't hire young kids. I have a guy on the road right now who's never toured before on Foreigner.
Got it.
But we're really trying to take those guys and say, hey, you know, you have experience. You have stuff. Let's get you off the road. Because I don't care what anybody says. No one wants to be on the road forever.
True.
And let's move you into a project management position. Let's move you into HR. Let's keep you in the business because you have the knowledge. And having your knowledge will make these tours go so much smoother, whether it be on site or on the computer or just an ear to talk to. Yep. So we're really trying to reach out and bring in some of these roadies who are like, hey, you know what? I've toured forever. I know the business. How can I move into an office position? And
this
to me,
is music to my ears.
It's not fair to see these guys in these office positions that don't have touring experience. I guess just like it's not fair if you're on tour to see kids who don't have touring experience. But if you got to put them somewhere, you know, you need to be being led by people who know what's going on. You need to be led by people who know the loading docks, who know the venues, who know the worst venues, who know the
fire marshals,
and who you can call and they can be like, hey, do this and this, you know. Yeah. And things were going with me when I was getting calls. I'm like, I'm not telling the fire marshal that.
Yeah.
Well, why not? And I'm like, well, I've been on a bus for 15 years. I know you haven't. So
you need some of that. Yeah.
And that goes back to the
wisdom.
Ego, right? But this business needs that. It needs to be led by people who know what's going on.
Yes. I wish we had another hour, so we're going to have you come back out.
That's fine.
But Cole, thank you so much for being here today. We have so much more to dive into. I need to hear far more accident stories.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And you got to hear when we blew up the elephant.
Dude! All right, we'll see you again then. Thank you so much.
Take care.